Welcome to Secrets of the Stars, where we explore the ancient knowledge of astrology, decode your unique blueprint, and unveil how the wisdom of the sky contributes to your life. I'm your host, Abby Lutus, astrologer, mentor, and sky guide. It's time to embark on a cosmic adventure of self-discovery and understanding why you are the way you are. Let's dive in. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Secrets of the Stars. I'm so excited to be back on the podcast, and as you're receiving this episode, I am midway through my final tour here in Central Australia. The final tour for the season. I have been here for a little over 3 months, and it's a little bit different to what I've been previously doing. I've previously been coming out here for 6 or 7 months at a time over the winter, but this time round this year, I had decided that I would only come back for a shorter stint. So I'm actually really excited to be heading out on my next adventure. I just celebrated my birthday, my solar return, and if you missed it, you can catch the episode from last week, episode 40, where I talked all about solar returns and how powerful this particular day is in astrology. And if you have been following along, by now you'll know that I am preparing for the World Masters Surf Life Saving Championships, which are being held on the Gold Coast. So I was formerly a beach sprinter and quite successful at that, along with my gorgeous friends. We would often compete every summer in surf life saving competitions, and we did really successfully well. So I'm excited to be heading back over to the Gold Coast to meet up with them and compete in the World Masters Championships for our beach relay. I'll also be doing the beach flags, and I may even do the beach sprint. I'm a little undecided. You know, my training has been a little disjointed. I must say I'm very proud of the fact that I've been training on the trail and maintaining a regular schedule for the last 6 or 7 weeks, which I've never really been able to do, but having this goal has really helped me. Anyway, I am pre-recording this episode as I'm going to be out on the trail and I have a bunch of travel coming up. And so I just wanted to make sure there was a podcast episode here for you because I am loving this podcast. I am loving showing up and sharing all this incredible astrological information and knowledge. I wanted to let you know that I'm still open for readings, and the exciting news is that very soon my schedule is going to be even more open. But if you are ready to book in now, if you want to take a deep dive into your personal natal chart, your birthday chart, and further understand your uniqueness, your brilliance, come and book a reading with me. I also wanted to let you know that if you're ready to step up and expand your understanding and really feel empowered and know yourself, and you want to do that through a different lens, come and learn astrology with me. Starlit is my personal development course where you will learn how to use astrology and understand and thrive with the energies that you naturally embody. There are 9 modules in this self-paced course, and you can sign up right now and gain access. And when you sign up right now, you will get access to the next live round that I'll be running later in the year. So you can find all the links and the details in my show notes. Today, I am going to be returning to my mini series on the planets, and we're going to be talking all about the moon. We're going to be talking about Luna. Oh, I really love the moon, and I love that this can sometimes be, you know, the point of entry to astrology for a lot of people. Of course, we, you know, all know our star signs or our sun sign, but the next step is, you know, being curious and fascinated by the moon and her cycles and what this actually means. So I'm going to be covering a little bit about the moon, which I really think is what we reflect in the world. It's essentially our inner world. The moon is the closest object to our planet. And, you know, the sun and the moon are significant They are not actually called planets. They are known and referred to in astrology as luminaries, as the correct term. But the moon orbits Earth, and the moon does not have its own light. It simply reflects the light of the sun to Earth. And so in astrology, the moon is connected to our inner world, our emotions, our mood, our intuition, our daily energy. How are we feeling? What are we sensing? What is going on? And we can look at the qualities and the placement of the moon to understand what we might be reflecting from our internal process and how we can best work with our emotions. So I love to see astrology as a language of symbology. And, we can look at the moon and all that it symbolizes and gain information about that. If we were looking at our natal moon, we can see that this represents our inner world. It's essentially the relationship that you have with yourself and that many other people will probably not see. Your moon sign is really only seen by the people who are very close to you, the ones that you are in intimate relationships. And this is because it is that sort of deeper layer, that deeper level of yourself. Because the moon reflects the light of the sun, we can look at this in our chart. We can also look to clues by looking at the phase of the moon that we were born under, and we can gain an understanding of what energy and how that moon energy plays out in our lives. Now, the moon is moving around Earth, so it's constantly changing signs, it's constantly moving, and this is similar to our moods, our emotions, and is one of the reasons why it represents these in our personality. Another interesting thing about the moon is that most often children will play out as their moon signs until they are about 7 years old. And I talked a lot about this in my episode on astrology of children. So go back and have a listen to that one if it's of interest to you or you're feeling curious. So when you understand a child's moon sign, you can sort of understand the qualities that they may need or that they may be seeking in their life. So an Aries moon child might just need to do things for themselves. A Gemini moon child will probably want to have a little chat to you and be talking and having some fun. It's also really cool to sort of think back to when you were a kid and what did you yearn for? What were those things that would bring you emotional satisfaction? And you'll probably find that they align with your moon sign. So the moon archetype can be associated with the feminine and the different expressions of that feminine energy, okay? Luna is said to be a feminine planet, a feminine luminary, a feminine energy, and holds those qualities. And we can kind of see how this aligns with those feminine qualities, such as the maiden, the mother, the wild woman, and the crone. And think about how the phases of the moon also line up with this analogy of the feminine. So if we were to look to the new moon energy, this is that hidden, dark moon. It's the virgin, essentially. It's the maiden. The first quarter moon is that balance and that growing, nurturing energy, which can represent the mother. And the full moon, where that's this full expression, it can be a little bit crazy. We can see how this aligns with the wild woman. And then on the disseminating wise light of the last quarter moon, this can relate to the crone energy of the feminine. So it's really interesting to see how this moon archetype and the phases that it goes through lines up with this feminine energy. I want to touch on some astronomy of the moon because I really think it helps to be able to draw out the symbology of the moon and what it actually means. The moon is quite a fascinating place, and I think it's still not 100% known yet as to how it originated. But a lot of people say that it comes from a collision with an object from space hitting Earth, and that it was a part of Earth several billions of years ago. That there are several other theories as well about what the moon actually is. The moon is about 1/3 of the size of Earth, and it's approximately 384,400 kilometers from Earth. That's a pretty long way. You could fit 30 Earths in that space, essentially. And each year, the moon is moving about an inch further away from Earth. So, some interesting facts there for you. Now, the moon rotates at the same rate as it moves around Earth in 27 days. And this is why the moon will always show the same face or the same hemisphere to Earth, okay? And because Earth is also moving and rotating on this axis as it orbits around the sun. So that's a really interesting fact about the moon as well. It only shows us the same face. We can never see the backside of the moon or the dark side of the moon, which is not always dark, might I add. On a new moon, the dark side of the moon would actually be lit up by the sun. So the moon is allegedly made up of solid and liquid iron and a molten layer. And because of the moon's space atmosphere, it cannot repel energy and objects. So, we have this beautiful atmosphere around us, and Earth will burn up things or will block things from coming in and essentially protect us. But the moon does not have this. And so it essentially can't repel anything from space. And so it's covered in craters, which are caused by impacts from these outer space objects. And because the moon has no light of its own, its temperature is regulated by the sun. It can get as hot as 127 degrees, and when it's in full sunlight, and it can get as low as minus 123 degrees when the sun doesn't shine in certain places. So it really is dictated by the sun, its temperature. And, as I mentioned, it is reflecting the light of the sun. And so it's sort of like this reflection of our vital force, essentially. I wanted to touch on the cycles of the moon because these are quite fascinating. There are many different stages the moon moves through, and the moon will, as I mentioned, reflect the light of the sun. And depending on where the moon is in relation to Earth, it can cast a shadow on the moon, meaning that we can't see the moon in its entirety. And this is with the exception of the full moon, where we can see the whole face of that beautiful lit up moon that is orbiting Earth. Now, a lunar cycle can be segmented down into many different phases. However, I'm just going to break it down into 8 for the time being. And each of these 8 phases lasts for approximately 3.2 to 5.5 days. So it really depends on what the moon is doing. So we start off with the beautiful new moon. And this is marked to be the start of the lunar phase. This moon is perfectly positioned between the sun and Earth. And so the light of the sun will not illuminate the side of the moon that we can see. The new moon energy is the start of a new cycle. It's freshness, newness, intention, a beginning point where the illumination of the moon will start to change, all right? So it's a moving forward energy. This energy will be rising up from here as of more and more and more as the moon starts to become illuminated, as it starts to move through its phases. The new moon is a day, where the moon is vaguely visible due to its position relevant to the sun. So it's a really great day for setting intentions and starting new projects. Then we get to the waxing crescent moon, and this is the second of the 8 phases. And this is when the moon starts being illuminated. We can see that little crescent in the sky. The moon has moved off its direct Earth-Sun axis line and is now reflecting the slightest section on its surface. So in the southern hemisphere, the light is seen on the left side of the moon. In the northern hemisphere, it's seen on the right side of the moon. Waxing crescent energy is like the first growth and inspiration. And when thinking literally about what we can see, it's the moon's first light moving forward. This energy is uplifting, nurturing, it's gentle, and its energy continues to build and grow. The waxing crescent moon is mostly in the day sky, and it's beautifully visible in the evening sky as it sets not long after the sun. Then we move into the first quarter moon, and this is exactly that point, 1/4 of the way through the moon cycle. In this phase, the first quarter moon is being illuminated. It's a balance point, an equilibrium of light. The moon sits at 90 degrees off the Earth-Sun line, if we were to look at it in space. And in the southern hemisphere, the light is seen on the left of the moon, and the northern hemisphere, the light is seen on the right. And the first quarter energy is balanced, it's harmonizing, it's this budding energy, this opening. It's beautiful energy continues to build and rise. So it can feel enthusiastic and can feel athletic and it can feel youthful. The first quarter moon rises when the sun is at its midpoint and it's visible in the afternoon. So it'd be around 3 p.m. when the first quarter moon is rising. Then we move on to the waxing gibbous moon. In this phase, the moon is very much on its way to being full. The illumination of this moon can kind of look pregnant, but not completely full as the moon approaches its furthest point from the sun, essentially. So as I have been saying, this waxing energy, the moon in the southern hemisphere is seen on the light of the moon, is seen on the left of the moon, and in the northern hemisphere, it is seen on the right. So the waxing gibbous energy is beautifully energizing and creative. It's a time to really trust yourself. And as the waxing gibbous moon rises in the mid-afternoon, it's visible well into the late evening sky. Then we get to this full moon energy, which we all know and some of us love, and it can cause a lot of challenges sometimes, or sometimes it's just really beautiful, high energy. So the moon is essentially the full moon is the midpoint of the lunar phase. The moon is in its full illumination as it's perfectly positioned for the sun to be lighting it up exactly halfway, in this cycle. So the moon is now at its furthest point from the sun, and during full moon energy, energy can run high. Okay, it's the highest time of flowering. It's like everything is seen in full light. Like a new moon, this is a pivot point where the energy is now going to change. So the energy has been building, and then after this full moon, the energy will begin to release. Full moons are a time of releasing, letting go. Sometimes this energy might be too much or too high for a lot of people. And we often see emergency service workers, hospitals, these types of places just hit full on when it's a full moon. Now the moon's light will be growing less and less from this point forward, and the full moon rises in the evening, and it essentially rises at sunset, and it sets as the sun is rising. All right, so it's up all night. It's directly opposite the sun and directly opposite the point of the new moon, which is why the light is being reflected off the moon to Earth for the entire night, essentially. All right, then we start to head into the waxing phase, or the waning phase, I should say, waning gibbous. So this is the first phase where the moonlight begins to disseminate. The illumination of the moon starts to shrink, and it starts its journey towards the sun. So in the southern hemisphere, the waning moonlight, the light is seen on the right side of the moon, and in the northern hemisphere, it's seen on the left side. And the energy has now switched to a more restorative and inward focused energy. And it's a great time for manifestation and receiving a change, a chance to relax into a new rhythm. And this waning gibbous moon will rise in the late evening and sets in the morning. The last quarter moon is the phase that we see the final quarter of the moon illuminated, and this is another balance point, just like the first quarter moon. The moon is now 3/4 of its way through the cycle, and like the first quarter, we are seeing that equilibrium of light, that balance. The moon sits at 90 degrees off the Earth-Sun line, And yeah, it does have a similar energy to this first quarter moon. Different in a way, though. The last quarter moon, it's similar because it's balanced and it's harmonizing, yet now this energy is directed inward. So it's concerned with transformation and giving, and this energy continues to lower. So feelings of restoration and relaxation are strong. The last quarter moon will rise at midnight and it will be visible in the morning sky, and it will set when the sun is at its midpoint. And finally, we have that waning crescent moon, that really fine slither of a moon. And this is the last illumination of the moon before she heads into that dark and new moon place. The moon is nearly back in a position directly in line with the earth and the sun. And, this waning crescent moon energy is that of rest and reflection on the cycle. So perhaps sowing seeds for new growth for the new moon ahead. It's really a time of quietening down and slowing down. A waning crescent moon will rise in the very early morning, and it will be really difficult to see because it's going to be setting in the late afternoon because it is getting so close to that sun cycle. So there are so many ways that we can apply the moon cycles to our lives. And it's, you want to really gain an understanding of how you relate to the moon. So start tuning into your lunar cycles or the lunar cycles and note how you're feeling as things move through each phase. Gain an understanding of how you can start to apply the energy and the rhythms into your life. In general, as the moon waxes, we're going to build from a new to a full moon energy, and it's the same with us. We build from this new to full energy, like we are rising towards something, building and growing. And the more the moon is illuminated, the more energy is available until it reaches its fullness. And then the moon starts to move into the shadow and her light disseminates and the energy is turned inwards for a more relaxing and a restful state. So understanding the moon's energy and working productively with it is a really, really incredible approach. And just because the moon is waning doesn't mean you have to stop your workouts or stop, expressing yourself or relax for this entire phase. Just allow an understanding of the energy to guide you without letting it overrule your life. Waning energy might simply mean doing something that's going to help you ground and support yourself in a restorative energy. And whilst under the lunar cycle or using the lunar cycle as a guide, it can be a really wonderful tool. There are many other planets moving through certain signs in the sky that you can also play with those energies and how they're interacting with the moon. But in general, when the moon is waxing, the energy profile is building, rising, or an outward expression. And then when it's waning, it's a slowing, disseminating, and inward focused energy. Let's have a little recap of the moon when it comes to astrology and what it actually means and where it is in its strength. So essentially the moon is the ruler of Cancer. So if you have a moon in Cancer, you're very likely to have a strong moon energy. The moon is also in exaltation, so it's in a strong position when it's in Taurus. The moon is in detriment in Capricorn and in fall in Scorpio. And the moon likes to spend its time in the third house. So if you have any of those placements that might be of interest to you, or just know when they are moving through those areas in the chart that, sometimes the moon can be feeling in a good space and sometimes it's going to be feeling in a challenging space. Moon energy is yin, or it's feminine or negative, many different ways to express. I don't mean negative as in, it's just the polarity that I'm expressing. The day of the moon is Monday. The colors of the moon are white, silver, and gray, and we can see that represented in the colors of the moon itself. The chakra related to the moon is the heart chakra, and the metal is silver. And the moon qualities essentially are cold and dry. If we think of the moon, these are the qualities that it represents. And after all that I've explained, the moon is a cold and dry place. Some ways to understand the moon from an astrological point of view, I have some keywords here and I'm going to read them to you. So, intuition, emotions, mood, subconscious, mind, body, expression, feminine, receptivity, feelings, reflections, instinct, cyclical, nurture, rhythm, ritual, instinct, familiarity, maternal, care, feed, security, yin, and influence. Now, as I was saying, moon is such a powerful energy to work with. So really tap into learning about the moon, about the cycles, and how you can deeply understand your moon energy as it applies to you. Find out where the moon falls in your chart. What sign is it in? What house placement is it in? What aspects does the moon have going on in your chart? It's a really wonderful way to deepen your connection with the moon energy. One thing I love about the moon is just so visible in the sky. You know, we all know which one the moon is, right? Sometimes it's hard to place which is Venus and Mercury and Mars, but not with the moon. We know exactly where it is at all the time. So it makes it really easy to follow. So lean into that beautiful energy and, see what you learn. Enjoy that. Anyway, there you have it. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I hope you have found it really insightful. I have loved bringing this episode to you. I'm going to be back with another episode in my Signs mini-series next week, where I'll be talking all about Virgo. So remember, if you would like to have your chart read or have a reading of any kind, you can please go on over to my website, abbylutis.com. You can find all the links and details in my show notes. And until next time, keep shining bright. Thank you for joining me on this cosmic journey of self-discovery. If you have enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and share it with someone who you think would love it. Keep exploring the secrets of the stars, and remember, the universe has woven a unique story just for you. Until next time, keep shining bright.